Todd actually lives here in Phoenix. He lives like 20 minutes away from where I am.
Wait, stop. You beat Todd McFarlane for Best Cartoonist 2019? The year he comes out with issue 300 of Spawn. You beat him? You win? I would plaster that everywhere, Nick. That's the thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Within Arm's Reach, the video podcast thing where I talk to other comic book creators about the comic books that they keep within arm's reach to get jazzed about more comics. My guest today is none other than Phoenix, Arizona's best comic book artist of 2019, Nick Cagnetti. Nick, how is it going?
It's going pretty good. Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Yeah.
Talk about some of my favorite books that I always keep around me.
I'm excited to hear what you think. Well, let's introduce Nick first, why don't we? Nick, you have worked on books like Infinite Wonders and The Spirit of the Shadows, but recently you've been doing Pink Lemonade, which came out through It's Alive Press, just 2019, just this past year.
Yeah.
At the same time the Baboon came out.
That's right. I think we both debuted around Heroes Con last year, right?
Yes. Was that June 15th last year?
Yeah.
But I wanted to get a little more about you, because this is something that was interesting to me as I started doing something similar. The Pink Lemonade comic started off as a strip, yes?
Yeah, that's right. I actually have some of them right here within arm's reach. Those were they were like full painted with watercolors and acrylics, and it was just sort of like a thing that I really wanted to do because I had done a few books before then, and it was kind of like burning me out, so I needed to try like a different shift of gears, and I thought trying the format of comic strips would be a fun way to do that because I could, play with the pacing in a different way, and it would be an opportunity for me to just do something on my own, see if I could write something, see if I could do it. This one is actually an unused one from right around here is where I decided I'm done with the strips. I'm just going to go back into making a book with the characters. So I just picked it up right from there and went to the books. But yeah, it was a lot of fun because there was a bit of an evolution as you go along. By the end, I was really just going like full pop with the colors and everything, and sort of like found the voice for the character that way.
Yeah, that is a clear.
Yeah, that sort of stuck then from there.
That's awesome. So what were you looking at to go off and do a comic strip? What were the books that were inspiring you at that point? Or were you just like, I'm going to do a comic strip?
I think it was pretty much just that, because I was like, I just finished The Spirit of the Shadows back then. I was in college in this little rinky-dink apartment up there, and it had a bunch of crickets all around inside because a tree fell over right in front of the place. So it was like months of not sleeping very well, and I was just like, I need to do something. So I just started drawing like this motorcycle person, and then it just kind of went from there. Like, how can I do this? And then I just started plotting out the little strips. I didn't have like any scripts or anything. It was just like, draw these here. That seems like a good pace. And that was the fun part about figuring out with the comic strips, because it was trying to get that good pace for everything. There's a little bit of payoff every single installment, and you just keep pushing it forward.
Yeah. I really, really love the strip format. I've been doing the Baboon strip, and I really wish I could do it daily. I wish I had the time in my schedule to just be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm only doing this comic strip daily, and then move on from there.
Right.
So let's quickly talk about the Baboon and Pink Lemonade Kickstarter, and then we'll stop talking about us and we'll get into what this comic book podcast is all about, and that's talking about other people. The Baboon and Pink Lemonade Jamboree. The Baboon and Pink Lemonade Jamboree is a Kickstarter going on right now for the next 15 days. If you've seen this late, tough mahoogies, you missed out. We might have some extra printed copies that you can buy from one of our shops. But currently that is running. It's been very successful so far. I think we're 600% funded, which is incredible and crazy. So yeah, I guess we haven't had this conversation on camera or in front of anybody. So why did you say yes when I presented, hey, let's do this?
It was something that was already on my mind before you even approached me, honestly. Because I was thinking about it with some other people too, but then I'm like, how can I do this? And then you just had like the perfect idea, just like going for it, and then like a singular crossover book like that, and it just made a lot of sense, and just kind of reminded me of like all those old 90s crossovers in like the big heyday. Like there was like crossovers like every single month, it seemed like, from like everybody, and it was just super fun. And you don't really see that much in like this modern era of comics. I guess I don't know why, but
and especially in indie comics, right?
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man and Daredevil team up left and right, and everyone I guess everyone expects it now, so it's nothing special. But indie comics used to do it all the time, and they just haven't. So let's bring it back. Let's do more of them.
Exactly. It's like you were saying to me one of those other times, it's sort of just like it opens up the characters, and it makes it feel like they're part of a bigger thing. And I thought in the instance for like the Baboon and Pink Lemonade, it would be like a really easy way. It'd be a really easy fit. Like it's something that I could definitely see. And working on it with you, it was like it definitely made sense. Like it wasn't hard to like make them work together, I think.
It was stupid easy.
Right.
So easy.
It was great.
But enough about us. Let's start at the beginning. What was the first book that you were reading that inspired you to be like, oh, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. Making comics, that is.
I think the very first books that I read, I was like 4 or 5. I couldn't even hardly read at that point, but I had like these reprints. In the late 90s, Marvel was putting out the phone book size black and white essentials. Had like the whole Spider-Man run from the beginning, with Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and then few volumes after that, going up to like 100. But like those early books, the Lee and Ditko stuff, I think Steve Ditko's art really stuck out, and that was sort of like the very first inkling of something like capturing my attention like that, because it wasn't just cool Spider-Man. It was like I really understood like well, this isn't your usual thing. This has a unique voice, and all the characters have so much life to them on the page. I really like how quirky like all of Ditko's characters were, and that was something that really like stuck with me instantly.
And it seems like such a big part of the way you make comics and your character creation. When I look at your stuff, I immediately see like Allred and Ditko. That's totally. You come by it honestly too, so it's not a big surprise. Go look at Nick's stuff, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I know what he's getting at.
Right. I like cutting like little tiny guys in the background with just like dots for eyes and stuff like
Yeah,
that. It was
yeah.
fun. But anyway, like some of the first books that I remember having like a big impact on me, I started reading around 2001. So there was like a lot of Spider-Man stuff out there for like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old that was interested in this stuff to find.
Right.
And one of the early ones that sort of stuck out to me was this mini series that Steve Rude drew for Marvel, a 3
Oh,
issue
yeah.
Spider-Man one. And I don't really see this ever brought up much, and it kind of like always would make me sad because I like this stuff is full of great um, Rude work because he's just sort of riffing on the Ramita Spider-Man and just like going crazy with it, using like trademark his trademark panache to
Yeah.
like bring it up to modern readers for. And one thing that I really liked about it right off of the gate was I had those essentials, which had like it had this story from Ramita and Stan Lee that had like this stone tablet, this ancient stone tablet that Spider-Man had to protect and everything. It went on for like 10 issues, which was pretty big in the 60s, late 60s.
Yeah, yeah.
But right off of the gate, there had like flashbacks to that, like sort of like elegantly composed with this spread with like webs going around and everything. And I remembered seeing that story in those essentials I read, and that was like a little early thing, like, whoa, I've seen that before. And it was really cool because it sort of was like an early inkling, like, oh man, all this stuff can happen in comics, and you don't even know that stuff was ages ago, and it can come up again, and you don't even need to read that previous stuff because this works on its own as a fun little adventure story where they're trying to recover another piece of that thing from like 40 years before. And you got appearances from people like Doctor Strange. So it's like one of those things again where it's like you have this wider universe and people just run into each other like it's nothing.
Yeah. You mentioned something and I want to like pause here for a second and get some more of insight onto, clearly this has influenced the way that you work now, but it works on its own. The idea that here's all this past stories that have happened, but it comes back to the comic book as a unit. Is that something that you try to do just on the regular? Like that's something you've pulled from old comics, because that is definitely a huge old comics thing. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I think something, especially for the Pink Lemonade stuff I've been doing recently, is trying to make sure that every single issue has like a beginning, a middle, and an end in a satisfying way. Like things happen, your story's moving along to a natural point, and by the end, you'll feel like you've gotten a good chunk of meaty stuff to bite on as a reader. There's this great sequential stuff from Steve Rude that was like early like things for me, just seeing like temporal like play at hand in a space on the page with like people swinging from one end to the other. And this page right here, you got all kinds of action blending in from like the like left to right and everything. It's just super cool. And look at that Steve Rude work right there. It's just got classic Spider-Man lamenting all the people he's lost and everything. And it's one of those things where it sort of was entrenched in the then current continuity. So you have things like Mary Jane, his wife was dead at the time. She died in like a plane crash, but nobody believed that would stick. Like none of the writers writing the other books at the time were just like, if he was grieving, it would always be like the other people he's lost, because he's like, Mary Jane's still out there. She's not dead. And sure enough, a few months later, she was back. But it isn't like a big thing. It's just sort of like mentioned, you know.
Yeah.
And especially at the end here, just always liked this version of the lizard that he did. It was super
Yes.
big,
Oh,
ridiculous.
it's so good.
Yeah, but just a fun book. I'm sad it never gets mentioned much.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. I've never read it.
Right.
I'm a Steve Rude fan, but I've never read this. I've written it down. I'm gonna go track it down. Well, let's get into some more of your recent. You're working on Pink Lemonade. You're working on, I don't know what issue you're working on now. If maybe you're finished with your run and you're taking a little break, but while you were working on it, what is the stuff that was constantly within arm's reach? The stuff that you were constantly looking at.
This whole Madman run back here, I got like all of these sort of. They were a big inspiration to me, just in general for the whole Pink Lemonade character, and I my art in general, really. I think perspective on what you could do with comics. Like before that, I've just read like a lot of mainstream Marvel, DC stuff and all that, and then I'd always loved Mike Allred's art before then. Like the stuff he did on Ecstatics and everything. That stuff was great. This one right here is, I think, one of the earliest books that I read by Mike Allred. So that was, a big like eye opener for me, because it was a fun story. But I ended up getting this book signed by Mike Allred the first time I met him. It was super nice to meet him, and his wife Laura. They were both super nice to just some random kid who said, like, I liked your art. But because they were talking to me about like these furniture stores that they saw like around the area with like these cool like bowl chairs and everything, and I'm like, yeah, I know which store you're talking about. But yeah, that was great. One of the second time I ran into them was at San Diego Comic Con, and I was waiting for a portfolio review, and it was like taking forever. So I was like dozing off, falling asleep in the chair, and I was wearing a Madman shirt that I got off of his shop. It was this image on the cover, but I hear some voice in front of me. He's like, "That's a cool shirt. Where'd you get it?" And then I would wake up and I'm like, "Whoa!" And I spring up. I'm like, "Oh, I got it on your shop." I think they remember me from before, from like a year or two before then, which was cool because we talked for a little bit more, and it was great. But anyway, this story, you got inks by the great Joe Sunot, and it's old school Marvel fun, just Spider-Man and the Human Torch trying to make each other mad all the time. Spider-Man takes the Invisible Girl out on a date just because he knows it'll make Johnny mad, and he's like all excited about it, and he's got a web bow tie.
Brilliant.
And the Human Torch tells the Submariner that Spider-Man's out to take the Invisible Girl. So they get into a big fight, which is just wonderful. And just from there, it was just a fun book. I really like it, and I always come back to this one. It's just it just feels like what the kind of comics I want to make, just fun stuff like that that has heart and it has like some heft in there too. But I think that was the first Marvel book that Mike Allred drew. It was from like '96. It was like right at the height of the Madman comic stuff from Dark Horse, I think. So I think right around then he did that Superman crossover with Madman too, right around then. Which
Right.
was,
Yeah. The hullabaloo.
yeah, heck yeah, it's a super fun one.
Super. Yeah. I'm a big fan of this story. It's so silly. Superman,
Yeah,
Superman and Frank switching bodies or switching powers. Like,
yeah, then becoming like a composite Superman Madman.
so good.
Yeah. And but really finally diving into Madman was like a game changer, because then like right after that in 2013 I started doing my own book with my friend, the Infinite Wonders one, and we pulled like a lot of I feel like my design for that main character was really inspired by Steve Rude's Nexus, like in particular.
Yeah.
But like Pink Lemonade herself is pretty inspired by like Frank Einstein, his whole worldview and the way he thinks of everything. It just was it felt like a kindred spirit of sorts for me, just coming to that.
I know what you mean. I think I was 23. It was my birthday the first time I ever read a Madman story. And
Mm.
I went to a coffee shop, I got a coffee, and I had the trade. And I sat down and just read the whole trade. And it really, really struck me um, on like stuff that I was trying to do and kind of who I was trying to be and figuring out where I sat in the comics world. There's a line. It was the first time that I had seen an artist like talk about stuff that personal stuff through a superhero character. Frank is kind of Mike Allred, right? Like there's a little bit of him. It's inescapable. Um, and he says something. There's one line in particular that has always stuck with me, uh, where he falls down and he gets hurt, and he says, "I wish I could curse, but it always sounds weird coming out of my mouth."
Yeah.
And it struck me so real because I have that problem sometimes.
I love that character. He's super great, super relatable, super unlike anything else really that felt like it came before and still stands like in a league of his own. I'm a big fan. There's one issue in particular from the Madman Atomic Comics run that I think is like masterclass. It's like he meets his childhood favorite fictional hero, Mr. Excitement, and that whole issue, it's just him and Mr. Excitement going through like this odyssey of trying to discover Frank's real, like get him out of like this funk. But he's every single panel, Mike Allred is like emulating a different cartoonist throughout the decades, from like the start of the medium to current days, and it was just like super cool. That was a one like mind blowing issue for me to see, like when I was going through that stuff originally.
So what else? What else? I want to know. I want to know.
This one by Darwin Cook, one of his very few Marvel books that he ever did. This one came out around 2002, and I loved this book when it came out, and I still do because it's a Valentine's Day story of all things, and the way he gets the exposition right out to you in the beginning, it's like a storybook, and it's super unique and it's just super fun.
Ugh.
Like, yeah, Spider-Man, the Vulture battling it out, and you got J. Jonah Jameson rooting for the Vulture and everything. But the fun thing about this is Spider-Man spends most of the issue just knocked out laying in an alley on trash bags while all these supporting cast people are just going through their night on Valentine's Day. And I just fell in love with Darwin Cook's art. Like everything was just so elegant, and it felt like a cartoon, but sort of better. I don't know how to explain it, but that, just seeing it as like a 7-year-old, I was like, wow, this is super cool and different. There's this one character that they made just for this issue, this Daily Bugle intern named Spence, and he's super fun like POV sort of character, and he's walking past Spider-Man in the trash there, going get the Jameson some coffee and everything at the Coffee Bean, and I think it's super interesting when you're able to make a book that is like Spider-Man is always famous for his supporting cast and the normal people in his daily life that sort of enrich those stories and sort of ground them. And what I like about this issue is like it's primarily just focused on the people just having a night and the things that happen and the personalities that clash, and it's all just super interesting on its own without any real superheroics or anything. And like the character acting on the page is just all super expressive. Like you got this guy who's just he lost the job to that other guy, so he puts some laxatives in Jameson's coffee and everything. And there's this girl that likes the Bugle intern guy, and he's just sort of it's super fun. And at the end, you got you find out that these two women that have been sort of going through this, they both have a date with Peter Parker somehow, and you find out that Peter Parker just wasn't like paying attention at all. He was thinking, like Darwin Cook has it like illustrated what Peter's really thinking. He's thinking about Doc Ock and Aunt May and Electro and Aunt May being frail and everything, and they're both like asking him out, and he's like, ugh. And then at the end, he's dressed. Spider-Man's dressed as a hobo because he needs clothes because it's so cold out, and he ends up getting yelled at by these two girls, and then because he stood them both up, but then they're everything's good in the end. Even the Vulture has a happy ending. It's just like a complete story. Everything comes full circle. Everything is just super satisfying, and it's super funny seeing like Spider-Man in a situation where he's like knocked out all the whole time, and then when he gets up, he falls over again, and then he has to wear a homeless person's clothes. It's just that kind of humor, that kind of like heart inside the whole story is just like something that stuck out to me, and it's one that I continuously come back to just because it's all right here in this one book, and it's perfect on its own. Darwin Cook did another issue for that series, a Christmas issue. It had like the Fantastic Four and Puppet Master, some of the Inhumans in there, and it's just a fun Christmas one too. I'd really recommend those because it's unfortunate that Darwin Cook didn't do more Marvel work, but the stuff he did do was great and full of heart. We just need more stuff like that. It's great.
I agree. More fun, silly comics. I think a lot of people are so hung up on the doom and gloom of so many things, but also just like, I don't know. I find it a little easier to write some doom and gloom. I find sometimes it's a cop out. Let's make a fun story, make it charming, make it silly. I'm more interested in reading it.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out the balance between fighting the doom and gloom. You know, like for me with the Pink Lemonade character, a big thing for her is like being confronted with these like terrible realities and like sort of like depressing realities and trying to remain positive in the face of all that. And I think characters like Frank and Peter Parker helped me tune in on that sort of. Here's a random issue of Marvel Fanfare that I really like. It's got Michael Golden art all in it, written by Bill Manilow. But it's just classic, classic feeling stuff, but with super great Michael Golden storytelling. Um, it's just the Hulk gets infected by some space spores and gets all mad. So he crashes down in the Bronx, and Spider-Man has to fight the Hulk. But I mean, it's sort of a typical Spider-Man Hulk battle. That's just gorgeous looking with Michael Golden art, which has like it feels to me like it's got some humor in the way he draws like the background people and everything, and Spider-Man's expressions through the mask, and it's great like cartooning on the Hulk and everything. But the action is super kinetic, super detailed. Like sometimes I like to go out super all out on some specific panels and stuff, and things like this are inspiration for me there in that regard, because he just packs so much into this stuff. It's crazy. Like, look, he's got all these individual bricks. I don't even know if it'll show up, like being like decimated and everything. It's crazy. It's super fun.
Yeah, that looks great. Michael Golden, man.
Yeah, all this stuff blowing up and Spider-Man just running away, holding people. He's trying to save people all the time while all this stuff is blowing up around the Bronx. And it's and at the end everything is just decimated, and Nick Fury pops in, and too little, too late. And I just really like this one because of the Golden's art. You don't see him drawing like characters like Spider-Man, the Hulk much, but he's always often cited as like an inspiration for a lot of guys popping up around like the 80s and stuff. Like I know Todd McFarlane says he did like the Spider-Man spaghetti webs, like, but I think Michael Golden was doing the spaghetti webs first. Like he did like a few issues of Marvel Fanfare with Spider-Man. He had the spaghetti webs. I think McFarlane was inspired by Michael Golden in that regard. I don't know. Todd actually lives here in Phoenix. He lives like 20 minutes away from where I am.
Wait, stop. You beat Todd McFarlane for Best Cartoonist 2019? The year he comes out with issue 300 of Spawn. You beat him? You win? I would plaster that everywhere, Nick. That's the thing. That's
a good point. A few years ago, I actually did meet him though at his office, because one of my friends, I guess, had a connection with his office person. So we went into his office, and I got to show him some of what I was working on back then. It was the Spirit of the Shadow stuff, and that stuff is kind of rough for me. Like just in terms of like the drawing quality and everything. Like it wasn't like fully developed. I mean, but it was McFarlane was pretty nice. He gave me some good tips that I took to heart about, use more of the line variation, use more different line weights, and I'm like, yes, I will. So immediately after that, I'm just going for like more different brush sizes and everything, and trying to mix it up more. And that's something I still take with me. Like I think the more line variation you have, you're giving more depth to things, and it definitely brings it to life a little bit more. So that was super valuable. But he said this stuff could be like a good indie style. I don't think like mainstream style, but this could be like a good indie style. And I'm like, oh boy. I think these days I'm trying to hone in. I'm trying to combine that love of the indie stuff with the mainstream stuff a bit more. Um,
I, I know exactly what you mean. I feel like I'm in the same exact boat.
yeah,
For so much of my starting off and doing sample pages for Marvel and DC, and even just pitching stuff to indie publishers, I fall in this weird category, and I think you fall in this category too, which gives me a little hope.
yeah,
Which is I'm too indie for mainstream stuff, but I'm too mainstream for indie stuff. So it's
right,
just, well, I guess I got to make my own comic book.
right. I I think it's interesting because like I'm doing these Spider-Man drawings for a fan podcast lately, and I have like full reign to draw him however I want to do him, and it's interesting because I'm trying to blend what I do on like my comics and try and blend that with like what people have done on Spider-Man over the decades, and yet try and make something that doesn't feel like derivative of any of that other stuff. But
Yeah.
I think I think that's the thing is like if they ever bring on people like us, you want them. You I think the thing would be that like the hook should be like bringing our perspective to that character and like more of that flavor from the stuff that we do typically. And I don't think it should be sort of like compromised in that regard because I mean I don't want to water it down, you know, like if I'm ever doing anything like that for a big publisher, I want to do what I like to do for the most part, you know.
Right. So Marvel, if you're watching this, let Nick draw Spider-Man. That's the big takeaway. Clearly he loves it.
I have a lot of ideas. I don't think they want me to write anything, but I have ideas.
If you have one more comic to show, let's show
Sure.
that off, and we'll
Perfect. I got one more right here.
sweet.
Um, just like we were sort of talking about just having fun with things. This one was during Enough Said month. Marvel did a month where their issues were completely silent. So Paul Jenkins and Mark Buckingham, they had an excellent run on Peter Parker Spider-Man that I think should be brought up more often, but unfortunately it doesn't because it was sort of sandwiched at a time where so many Spider-Man books were coming out and they were all like great.
Yeah.
And this book sort of gets lost in the conversation, even though it was doing just like great stuff. Like for instance, this
Mark
issue,
Buckingham. Mark Buckingham is one of my favorites.
he's a great artist. In this issue, he really has like carte blanche to just let his talent shine. This whole issue is Spider-Man versus a gang of evil mimes. So the whole thing is just like it's great storytelling with all kinds of great visual gags, and all the pacing of it all is just super fun. It's all about like making those jokes land and everything, and all the mimes are super different looking and have super fun personality just from like looking at him. Like there's one that he shows up kind of often throughout the thing. He's just like a towering giant mime with like a funny looking face and everything. And there's a moment where there's a monk mobile stopped at a red light, and then the clown car pops up at the red light, and they're about to have a drag race, and then they left the monk mobile without any tires. The whole thing is just great humor, and at the end, Spider-Man moons the mimes, and to get them to follow him, and they get all mad, and he traps them in a plexiglass mirror, and he just laughs at the mimes, and the mime is getting carted away, and he's just like telling the police, he's like just pointing up to Spider-Man. Spider-Man disappearing, and then pops out and like waves at the mime, and even Peter's piece of cheese in his refrigerator at his apartment has like some humorous moments. A piece of cheese. Piece of cheese gets like excited when he opens up the refrigerator and has like a hearts pop up when he sees Peter, and then the piece of cheese gets sad when it closes the door on him. It's super great. I love that stuff.
Well, thanks, Nick. This has been a super, super fun talk. I'm so glad we were able to do this. Let's give people some plugs. Go ahead, plug your stuff.
Get the Pink Lemonade and Baboon crossover book. You know where to find it. But I'm on Instagram at Fudgy1Nick. I'm on Twitter at ncags, and my website for all my comic stuff is just radicalrealmcomics.com. I've had that for years, and that's just sort of like the label I put everything under. So I guess those are the big ones.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. It was a great time. Talking about these random books that I hold near and dear to me. It was great. Bring back the mimes.